All right, let's talk about immigration. Yes, that topic. The one that makes your uncle suddenly think he's a constitutional scholar at Thanksgiving dinner. It's a subject that has been twisted, turned, and weaponized. The actual facts have been buried under a mountain of fear-mongering and outright nonsense. But here's the thing. Understanding immigration isn't just about winning an argument with a relative who gets his news from a pop-up ad. It's about understanding what America actually is, what it has been, and what it's becoming. Spoiler alert, immigrants are not some invading force. They are an integral, fundamental part of the American story, past, present, and future. Ignoring that is like trying to understand a pizza by only talking about the box it came in. The conversation around immigration is often loud, angry, and spectacularly unhelpful. It's a screaming match. One side yells, "Build the wall." The other yells, "No, you're the wall." Meanwhile, the actual people at the center, the immigrants themselves, are reduced to statistics or political props. But these are real human beings with lives, families, and reasons for moving that are far more complex than a soundbite. They are woven into the fabric of our daily lives. So, for the next few minutes, let's agree to put the shouting on hold. Let's take a breath and look at the actual non-shouty data. So let's get into it. Because understanding this issue is fundamental to understanding the country we all live in. So, who exactly is coming to America? If you listen to certain cable news channels, you might think the entire population of one specific country has decided to collectively pack up and walk here. But reality is far more diverse and interesting. The immigrant population in the United States is not a monolith. It's a mosaic. It's people from nearly every country on Earth, creating a hugely varied demographic landscape. As of 2025, there are over 46 million immigrants in the U.S., about 14% of the population. That's a big number made of countless origins. Let's break it down. Top country of origin, Mexico. About a quarter of all immigrants, roughly 10.7 million, were born in Mexico. But Mexican immigrant numbers have been declining for over a decade. The big story, rapid growth from other parts of the world, especially Asia. India, around 2.8 million immigrants. China, close behind at about 2.4 million. That shift is changing the face of immigration in America. Beyond the top three, the list gets even more diverse. The Philippines, El Salvador, Vietnam, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Guatemala, South Korea, and that's just the top 10. Each of these groups brings its own culture, language, and story to the American tapestry. It's not one wave from one place, it's thousands of streams from all corners of the globe. The modern immigrant population is complex and ever-shifting. It's a global symphony. Listen to all the instruments, not just the loudest one. Now, why do people leave everything they know behind to start over in a new country? It's a monumental decision, not one made on a whim, like deciding to try a new brand of cereal. The reasons are as varied as the immigrants themselves. They generally fall into a few key categories, push and pull factors. One of the biggest drivers is economic opportunity. This is the classic American dream narrative. People in countries with limited job prospects, low wages, or systemic poverty look to the United States. A software engineer from India seeking work in Silicon Valley. A nurse from the Philippines filling critical healthcare needs. A construction worker from Guatemala hoping to send money back home. Another major reason is family. Yes, family. Immigration is often a chain reaction. Sponsor their spouse, sponsor their children, sponsor their parents, sponsor their siblings. This is family-based immigration, the bedrock of the legal system. Finally, safety and freedom. Millions are pushed from their homes by violence, war, political instability, persecution. These are refugees and asylum seekers, fleeing a civil war in Syria, fleeing gang violence in El Salvador, fleeing political persecution in Venezuela. They aren't coming for a better job. They're coming because staying home could mean death. The reasons people immigrate are deeply personal and profoundly serious. Once immigrants arrive in the United States, where do they go? Do they spread out evenly like butter on toast? Not exactly. Like most people, immigrants tend to move to places where they have family ties, community ties, or job opportunities. Historically, a few key states have been the primary destinations. the Great Immigrant Gateways. The data is crystal clear. 4 states are home to nearly half of all immigrants: California, Texas, Florida, and New York. The Big Four. California leads the pack with over 10 million immigrants, more than a quarter of the state's population. Texas, with its booming economy, has become a massive magnet, particularly from Mexico and from Central America. Florida is a major hub for people from the Caribbean and South America. But the story doesn't end with the Big Four. In recent decades, we've seen a fascinating shift. Immigrants are increasingly moving to new destinations in the Midwest and Southeast: North Carolina, Georgia, Washington, Virginia. Jobs drive this, like agriculture in North Carolina, and technology in Washington. These new settlement patterns are transforming smaller cities and rural areas, bringing new cultures and economic vitality. The dispersal has a huge impact on local communities. It can bring new life to shrinking towns. Immigrants open businesses. They buy homes. They enroll their children in local schools, boosting the local tax base. It's becoming a truly national story. The world of immigration is filled with a jungle of jargon and acronyms that seems specifically designed to confuse people. It's like, honestly, the government hired the person who writes IKEA instructions to design the legal system. But understanding a few basic terms is essential. Think of this as your cheat sheet for sounding like you actually know what you're talking about. You're welcome. First up, the big one: immigrant. What does that even mean? An immigrant is simply anyone residing in the United States who is not a United States citizen at birth. This broad category includes a whole bunch of different people. The most important distinction is between lawful permanent resident and undocumented immigrant. Lawful permanent resident, or LPR, also known as a green card holder, is a person legally authorized to live and work in the U.S. permanently. They can eventually apply for citizenship. They are here with the full permission of the U.S. government. They pay taxes. They serve in the military. They are on the path to becoming full-fledged Americans. On the other side, undocumented immigrant. The term is far more accurate and less dehumanizing than illegal alien. An undocumented immigrant is a person in the U.S. without legal authorization. This can happen 2 ways: entered without inspection, crossed the border without permission, or entered on a temporary visa and overstayed. About 40% of the undocumented population are visa overstays. They didn't sneak in, they flew in and just didn't fly out. Finally, refugee versus asylee. A refugee is outside the U.S. and is granted protection because they are fleeing persecution. An asylee is already in the U.S. and requests protection because they fear persecution if returned. Both are fleeing danger. The difference is where they are when they ask for help. The discourse around immigration is a minefield of myths and misinformation, often repeated so loudly and so often that they start to sound true. It's time to bring in the fact-checking bulldozer and clear away some of the most persistent and damaging nonsense. Let's tackle a few of the greatest hits, shall we? Because facts, unlike certain politicians' hair, don't lie. Myth number 1. Immigrants don't pay taxes. This one is just flat out, demonstrably false. It's a zombie lie that just won't die. The reality is, immigrants, including those who are undocumented, pay billions of dollars in taxes every year. They pay sales taxes every time they buy something, property taxes through their rent or home ownership, and income taxes. In fact, studies consistently show that undocumented immigrants alone contribute around $12 billion annually in state and local taxes. Myth number 2. Immigrants bring crime. This is perhaps the most toxic myth, used to paint immigrants as a dangerous threat. But the data tells a completely different story. Study after study conducted over decades by sociologists and criminologists has found that immigrants, both documented and undocumented, are less likely to commit crimes than native-born citizens. Cities with large immigrant populations often have lower crime rates than the national average. For example, El Paso, Texas, a city right on the border with a large immigrant population, is consistently ranked as one of the safest large cities in America. Myth number 3. Immigrants are a drain on the U.S. economy. This is a classic scare tactic, suggesting immigrants take more from the system than they contribute. Again, the economic consensus is a resounding nope. Immigrants are a net positive for the economy. They have high rates of entrepreneurship, starting businesses at twice the rate of native-born citizens. They are also consumers who buy goods and services, creating demand and jobs. The economy isn't a fixed pie. Immigrants help make the pie bigger. While they do use public services like schools and hospitals, the taxes they pay and the economic activity they generate far outweigh the costs. Statistics and data are crucial, but they can also feel cold and impersonal. They can't fully capture the human dimension of immigration. The real story is found in the lives of the millions of individuals who have made the journey to America. These are stories of resilience, sacrifice, and hope that play out every day in communities across the country. They are stories that remind us that behind every number is a person with a name, a family, and a dream. Let's look at a few archetypal examples that represent the experiences of many. Consider the story of someone like Maria, a composite character representing many asylum seekers from Central America. She was a small shop owner in her hometown in Honduras, but local gangs demanded protection money she couldn't afford to pay. When she refused, they threatened her and her children. Fearing for their lives, she made the agonizing decision to flee. She traveled north for weeks, facing incredible dangers, and finally presented herself to U.S. border officials to request asylum. Then there's the story of Aniket, a character representing a high-skilled immigrant from India. He was a brilliant computer science student who came to the U.S. on a student visa to get his master's degree from a top university. After graduating, he was hired by a major tech company on an H-1B visa, a program for specialty occupations. He now works on developing artificial intelligence algorithms that power everyday technology. He pays a significant amount in taxes and contributes his world-class talent to keeping America at the forefront of innovation. Finally, think about Lynn, a character whose story reflects that of many refugee families. Her parents fled Vietnam by boat after the war, arriving in the U.S. with nothing. They were resettled in a community in Louisiana, where they worked multiple low-wage jobs to make ends meet. She studied hard, earned scholarships, went to medical school, and is now a pediatrician serving a low-income community. When we talk about what immigrants bring to America, it's easy to point to the obvious and wonderful things, like a wider variety of delicious food. And yes, food trucks are a gift to humanity for which we should all be grateful. But the contributions of immigrants run so much deeper than cuisine. They provide an immigrant dividend, a massive boost to the country's economic vitality. Immigrants are entrepreneurial powerhouses. In fact, over 45% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by an immigrant or the child of an immigrant. Google, Apple, Tesla. Culturally, immigrants are the lifeblood of American innovation and art. They bring new perspectives, ideas that enrich the national conversation and prevent cultural stagnation. Perhaps most importantly, immigrants provide a demographic lifeline. Many developed countries, like Japan, are facing demographic crises with aging populations and declining birth rates. The United States has largely avoided this fate precisely because of immigration. They are, quite literally, the future of the American workforce. So, after all that, what have we learned? The simple, surprising, and yet completely unsurprising truth is this: immigrants are people. They are people who, for the most part, are doing exactly what our own ancestors did. Seeking a better, safer, more prosperous life, they are a collection of millions of individual stories of struggle and success, and weaving themselves into the American fabric in every town. Ultimately, how we view immigration is a test of our national